Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1275B and today's date is May 9th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Are Forces Being Put into Place Outside of Venezuela for Regime Change? Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded an interview today with Andy Hoffman. It is on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So all you need to do is go over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, it'll bring you right to the video, or you can come over to the X22Report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there, and you can play it right on the site, or you can go over to NewsSentinel.com, same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, and you can play the video right on the site. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we know that Trump on his campaign trail, he kept on talking about NAFTA, he kept on talking about global warming, and he made a lot of promises. And like we said, we're looking at both sides here to see if he is within the deep state. And now we are leaning towards more that the deep state has him. Now, there are still certain parts of him where he's trying to do certain things, but it looks like things are closing in around him, and that 1% hope is dropping in percentages to maybe 0.5% hope. Because what we're seeing right now is that on the day the White House threatened to withdraw from the North American Free Trade Agreement, that's NAFTA, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, well, he emerged as the key conduit between the United States and Canada. Now, according to White House officials, aides to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called Kushner urgently on April 26 after seeing news reports that Trump was considering signing the executive order which was going to withdraw the United States from NAFTA. Now, Kushner, who has an expansive profile that includes foreign policy, speaks regularly to Canadian officials on ranges of issues, well, Kushner told his Canadian counterpart that this was a matter the leaders needed to discuss themselves, according to the White House official. And of course, the White House official remains anonymous. Now, the Canadian media reports something completely different, that Trudeau wasn't the one who called Kushner. Kushner actually reached out to Trudeau's chief of staff to suggest a call between the two leaders. So, if this is true, it looks like Kushner has basically saved NAFTA, or is getting involved in the everyday politics in the White House, where Trump promised to get rid of NAFTA. He was ready to sign the executive order, and Kushner stepped in. Now, this tells us that Kushner then is working for the deep state. Now, let's move on to the Paris climate deal. Now, during Trump's campaign, he said he was going to remove the United States from the Paris climate deal because global warming is a complete hoax. And he ran on this. So he ran on getting rid of NAFTA. He ran on pulling the United States out of the Paris climate deal. And now the White House, well, they decided to delay removing the United States out of the Paris climate deal. Now, what do I mean by that? They decided not to meet on this issue until after the G7 leaders meet in late May. And we know through different reports that Ivanka and Jared are supposedly talking to Trump saying we need to stay in the Paris climate deal. Now, when we come up to that point where Trump has to make a decision and he goes back on his promise, if he does do this, he is then in line with the deep state, and he has gone back on his word with NAFTA. He has gone back on his word with the Paris climate deal, and he is going down a path where he's getting into bed with the deep state and turning his back on everyone that voted for him. Now, in the beginning, we needed to look at every single thing and every action that he did, because a lot of things are being said. Now, he hasn't signed on to the Paris climate deal. He hasn't removed the United States from the Paris climate deal. He has done nothing yet. NAFTA, he's still into in negotiations to see how that all works out. Now, we're still waiting to see what he does at this point, but we can see that things are not in his favor as of right now. The only thing that is working is that the arrest of people caught trying to sneak into the United States from the Mexican border, well, it has declined again. It's amazing when you follow the law and you actually take those people who are coming across the border illegally and you send them back, all of a sudden, less and less people try to do it. And less illegal immigrants enter the country. It's not the same as immigrants. These are illegals that aren't going through the process. And it's amazing how you don't need a wall for any of this. Now, we know that Yates and Clapper, they testified yesterday, and both Yates and Clapper, they said absolutely nothing and actually showed no proof whatsoever. There was nothing really accomplished by this whole entire thing. And what we are seeing right now is that the bigger question right now is, how did these leaks occur? Who did the unmasking? Because those things are actually against the law. So as of right now, there is no proof that Trump and Russia were colluding with each other. They couldn't produce anything. So one thing that did come out is when Yates was asked the same question as Clapper, whether Clapper had ever leaked either classified or unclassified information to the media, he asserted he had not. When asked the same question to Yates, she had spoken to reporters on background, and Clapper said he had done the same, but that did not include sharing classified information. Now, they just admitted that they didn't leak classified information. If the White House has documentation that says the opposite, well, guess what? They lied in front of Congress, and they're going to be in big trouble for that. And I think this is why Trump was out there setting Yates up by ask her this question, because I think they might have actual paperwork that shows that, yes, they did leak this information, or they have some type of proof. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, Judicial Watch is stepping in, and they announced today that it has filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice for emails of former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates from her government account. And they want all her emails to track down exactly what went on during this period with Flynn and everything else. Now, are they going to receive these emails? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But we can see that most of the time, Judicial Watch does get what they want. Now, when Trump came into office, many people were saying, why did Trump keep Comey on? Because we know that Comey was covering for Hillary Clinton. And no one really could understand it. Well, it looks like Trump just had enough of Comey right now. He basically said, you are fired, and he is terminating Comey. He informed FBI Director James Comey that he has been terminated and removed from office. Trump acted based on the clear recommendation from both Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And we can see right now that he basically said that Comey cannot effectively lead the FBI. New leadership is needed to restore trust. And he should have done this right from the beginning. Now, out in France, we understand that Macron, he won the election. But Marine Le Pen, she's out there saying that, well, something is wrong with the elections. And she's saying they might have been rigged. Now, we know this was done using paper ballots. Now, in France, and this is very important, if a ballot is damaged, it cannot be cast. And what happened was, up to 1/3 of the ballots sent out to voters, an estimated 60% of Le Pen's ballots, were destroyed at the time of mailing. Now, I don't mean burnt up. I don't mean discarded. I mean they were ripped. If they are ripped, they cannot be used, and they cannot use them. And they arrived in this state. When people opened up their envelopes, this is what they look like. They look like they had a little tear in them, and it looks like the tears are in all different places. And it looks like it was done by individuals. And this is one way to manipulate an election, because we know that everything was being done by paper ballots. We knew they were using clear boxes, and we knew that they were going to have to manipulate it in one way or another, because they couldn't blame Russia in cyber attacking the election system because it wasn't being done electronically. So they had to figure out a new way of doing it, and it looks like this is what they have done. Now, tensions, they are definitely rising in Venezuela. And what's very interesting about this, we know that Marco Rubio, he decided to push forth this bill that's going to basically fund a regime change in Venezuela. And we also have something else happening at the same exact time. 3 South American countries are preparing to hold a large military drill near Venezuela later this year. Now, there's going to be the involvement of the U.S. military in this drill, and this raises concerns about the U.S.'s true intentions in the area. Are they bringing the military up to this area because they know that there's going to be regime change at this point? And this is where it gets really interesting. Remember Michelle Temer, who was put into place, who was unelected because Rousseff was removed from her post because of certain allegations about different things that went on in her presidency. And we know that this individual, Temer, well, basically the United States controls this person. And Brazil invited the U.S. to participate in these drills. And we have to remember, the U.S. has funneled millions into Venezuelan opposition parties since the failed U.S.-led coup against Chavez in 2002. They've spent between 50 and 60 million since that point to have regime change. And now they're going to add another 10 million because of Rubio's bill, if that is passed. So we can see that it looks like they're on track to have regime change in Venezuela. Now, out in Syria, it looks like the Arab League, well, they had a change of heart right now. They're saying that they're not going to suspend Syria's membership anymore. That is now canceled. They're going to allow them to remain. Now, we know that Russia and Syria, Iran, Turkey, they set up this no-fly zone. Now, the Pentagon is out there saying, listen, we will fly our planes anywhere we want. We will hit any target that we need to hit. It doesn't matter what Russia says. It doesn't matter what Syria says. And what's very interesting about all this is that the United States is in a sovereign country with an elected president. They were not invited into this country, and they're telling this president and the country that they can fly their planes anywhere they want and destroy any target they want. Well, actually, no, they really can't. And what's very worrisome about all of this is if they attempt to do this and Syria or Russia, one of their systems locks on and knocks one of their jets out of the sky, we are then moving into World War III. Now, is this all talk? Most likely. But we can see right now that the deep state, they want what they want, and they don't want to be told that they can't do something in a sovereign country where basically they invaded. Now, the corporate media is out there, and they're using another anonymous source to let everyone know what the Trump administration is doing. They're saying that the Trump administration has approved heavier weapons for the Syrian Kurds to support efforts to retake Raqqa from the Islamic State. And can we really believe this? At this point, we cannot, because nothing can be confirmed. Basically, this is just out there telling everyone that this is what's happening, and we could see that most likely this is coming from the deep state, and this is being run from the Pentagon, from the CIA, where they want to bring in more weapons into this area. Because as I see it right now, even though Trump is teetering back and forth and leaning more toward the deep side, even though he just fired Comey, which is a bright light in a very dark tunnel, we can see that the deep state, they're still using tricks to convince us that this is the way it's really happening, and then it turns out that it really isn't. So we need to watch this very, very carefully, because we have to understand that Trump fired 59 missiles into Syria, and the corporate media was out there telling us that troops are being ready to be maneuvered in, we're going to be invading, and we're going to be going into North Korea, and all this information that they've been throwing at us really turned out to be fake. That 3 aircraft carriers are headed towards North Korea, and we could see that most of this stuff turns out to be fake. You know, China was amassing 150,000 troops on the border, Russia was doing the same, and all of this turned out to be completely fake news to push their agenda to make us think we're going to war. I mean, they still want war, but they're trying to build it up. Just like the buildup on North Korea, where they keep saying that they're testing nuclear weapons, and so far they haven't shown us any proof. Now, again, we're getting this from another anonymous source, and it doesn't fit into the pattern of what Trump is doing. And even though we see that he delayed the climate meeting, even though that he's negotiating NAFTA, he still hasn't made a final decision. He has made a final decision with Comey, which he just fired, because Comey was working with the deep state. So we are still looking at all these indicators to where he actually really stands. Now, something very interesting. They keep bringing up the idea that North Korea is going to hit us with an EMP. They have satellites flying in space right now where they have the ability to basically shoot down an EMP wave into the U.S. and knock out the power infrastructure. Others are saying that they have the ability to cyber attack the U.S. power grid. And they're continually bringing this up, saying that North Korea is getting ready to do this. And every time I hear this type of news, I think that the deep state, they have already planned to do this and to blame this on North Korea. And like I said, they have been planning and pushing a main event to get this war started. And what better way to do this by pushing their agenda by knocking out certain parts of the power grid. And this is what I do believe back in 2003 is what they were doing, where they were testing to see if they had the ability to bring down parts of the power grid, and they were able to bring down the East Coast for a couple of days. And I believe this was all being done in purpose. Everything they do is being done because they planned it well in advance. They knew that eventually that they had certain plans, and they have multiple all at once where they're going to use this. And like I said from the beginning, they will be using some type of cyber attack, maybe an EMP, to convince us that they just exploded a nuclear weapon. Even though it really wasn't coming from North Korea, they're going to try to use this type of false flag to convince us to get into war. And this is going to be a last-ditch attempt if they can't get anything else done, because we can see right now nothing else is being done in this area because they have a major problem. The president that was just elected in South Korea, he wants to have a dialogue with North Korea. Now, most likely, they're going to have maybe some type of an event in South Korea to try to change the South Korean president's mind. And this is what we are looking at right now, because we can see that at this point, they are desperate. They need to push their agenda, and they are running out of time. Because we can see right now in Syria, this whole strategy in Syria for these de-escalation zones is to basically protect the west portion of Syria, and then to drive east and to get rid of the Islamic State once and for all, to get rid of the United States once and for all. And we can see this is part of the strategy, and this is what the United States government central bankers are very worried about. The deep state, that's what they're worried about all of this. And we could see out in Syria, North Korea, things are really not going well for them. So they are going to become very, very desperate. They're going to push their agenda, and most likely we're going to see an event, because we can see right now that the economy, it is breaking down. JP Morgan already warned us that they need to basically bring the deposits together because they're preparing for a bail-in. And we see right now that when we hit September 30th, well, that $1 trillion runs out. We have a debt ceiling problem, and we're going to be running into a huge amount of trouble. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.